Today we're going to be learning about Siman Reish Samach Gimel, Sif Vav we're going to start with, which is going to deal with some very relevant laws, halachas, pertaining to lighting Shabbos candles that we did not cover yet. Really what this is going to discuss over here is if a person doesn't have anyone lighting for them. Even if a person's married, if they go to a different location, what happens? Or in places where there are groups together and no one's lighting, who lights? What do you do? So the Oz V'Hadar Mishnah Berurah gives a brief introduction on the upcoming two Sifim, Vav and Zayin, and says that we previously learned that the obligation to light Shabbos candles is technically on the man and woman alike. Nevertheless, it's enough if just one person in the house lights, and that is always the women, as we learned previously as to why the women light. In the upcoming Sifim in Vav and Zayin, we're going to discuss what the halacha is if a male is not in his house. Now, in which situation would he be exempt from his woman lighting in the house? And in which situation would he not be exempt and would need to light in a different location where his wife is residing for that night of Shabbos night, Friday night? Furthermore, what is the halacha if a person isn't married? An unmarried individual who is a guest in someone else's house. What does he do to light as a guest? If he's not a guest, he's just on his own, he's living in a studio apartment. For sure he has to light. There's no question there. Question is if he's a guest. We have to proceed and begin by relating that there are two unique obligations in this mitzvah of lighting Shabbos candles. Number one is chayvas haguf, which means that there's an obligation on a person's physical body. There's an obligation for each individual to light candles in honor of Shabbos. And it's a pleasure for Shabbos. It's covered in oneg Shabbos. The second aspect of Shabbos candles is that it's a choivas habayis. It's an obligation on the actual house. That the house that is over there needs to be filled with light in order that there will be shalom bayis, aka kadesh lo yikashel be'itzu be'evan. Shalom bayis, peace in the house, means that there will be light. Because if it's going to be dark, people are going to be tripping. Everyone's going to be getting upset with everyone else. So that is called shalom bayis. That is an obligation on the house itself, that the house has to be lit. An obvious practical ramification would result from this, which would be that if there was already light in the house, such as maybe if there was electricity, right? So you're not going to trip anymore. You wouldn't need to light, according to the reason of that it's an obligation on the house, chovas habayis. However, comes along the aspect of lighting candles, the chovas haguf. It's an obligation on a person's body. That teaches us that even if there's already light there, you still need to light. We're gonna have to delve into that a little bit more. So, regarding the aspect of chovas haguf, it's an obligation on the body. Husbands are exempt when their wife lights for them. However, if a person is staying in his own area, a male, and it's dark and he needs it to be light, and he could trip, you have to light over there. You have to make sure that there's light over there for chovas habayis, so that he won't trip. So electricity, if you leave on a light, would cover this. That is the basic introduction to what we're going to be discussing over here. In fact, Rabbi Chaim Noeh, in his Ksois HaShulchan over here, says that it's obvious. If you already have light that is coming into the room, even if it's not from that room, that's enough. Similarly, if you're not going in the room on Shabbos, the room doesn't need to be lit. A lot of times, especially nowadays in the post-COVID era, you have what's called uh, people who work from home. They have offices at home. One little room and it's just an office. You don't go in there on Shabbos. You don't need to leave the light on over there. He actually has a question. If you're going to enter into a room during the day and it's dark, no windows in the room, is that subject to the obligation of you need to light there or not? Maybe this obligation to light, the chovas habayis, the obligation on the house, only refers to a situation in which it's going to be dark at night. Then we say that you need to light. However, it could be that in a dark room during the day that doesn't have windows, which is an uncommon scenario, it's a milsa de lo ishkichi lo yigozru rabbanan. Kevan shu milsa de lo ishkichi. Since it's an uncommon scenario, the rabbis never made a decree and never said that you need to light that. Maybe there's no difference. So that's an interesting discussion of itself.
That was the room you're not sure you're gonna go into. So
Same idea. If you're not sure, it's better to light because you might go in. Now, it's brought down somewhere, I forgot where, that they say if you have other light coming in, then that's fine. So if you have any other sort of light coming in to the room from another room, it's fine. They even say even if it's coming from a bathroom, and even if it's coming from street lights through the window, which sometimes you could do, so then that would be fine. But these are the two aspects of how to break down what exactly is the obligation. Is it on the body or the house? And the answer is it's both. It comes up in by mezuzah. There's a sefer, Chovas Hadar, an obligation of the dweller. What is the mitzvah of mezuzah? Is it a mitzvah for you yourself to put it up, or just a mitzvah that there should be mezuzahs there? That's an obvious one, right? That already is explicit. It's a Chovas Hadar. And the proof is in the pudding. Because if you purchase a house and move in, and he leaves his mezuzahs there, guess what?
you're okay.
You're fine. Sivav begins by saying Bachurim. One word's cut off, it's on the previous page. I'm not going to open up a whole page for one word. Bachurim means unmarried males. Hahochem elomod chutz lebesim, who are going to learn Torah outside of their house. So the guys are in yeshiva. Halach is srichem lahadlik ner Shabbos bechidarim ulevarach alav. So they need to light Shabbos candles in their room and recite a bracha on it. So you see from over here this idea that if no one's lighting for them, they're in a different location than their parents. They need to light themselves in their room. Avamishu eitzel ishto, but someone who's by his wife. In sarach lahadlik b'chedaro ulevarach alav. Someone who's by his wife does not need to light Shabbos candles in his room and recite a bracha on it. L'fisha isho mivareches b'shvilo, because his wife is saying the bracha because of him. We see a few very important ideas from this. Firstly, we see that if you're not married, you're not with your parents, you have to make sure you're lighting. If you're not in the location where they are. And then we see if you're married, you're good. If Eitzel, keyword, if you're by your wife, if you're with your wife, if you're on a business trip and you're all alone, if you're on an all go guy Shabbos and you're all alone, you gotta light. Next Shulchan Aruch says, "Oreach she'in lo cheder meyuchod v'gami madlikim alav bebeso tzarich l'shtatif b'pruta." If you have a guest and he doesn't have his own room, which is very uncommon nowadays, most guests are given their own private room. But nevertheless, if the guest isn't given his own room,
What if it's like an open area? Let's say it's like in the basement and there's no like doors. Would that be considered
then
like a
that could
shared room?
happen. But if it's a basement and no one else is down there, then that's his own room. It's just a large room.
Right, but in theory the person could come, you know.
He could, but it's his own room.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Because there's no one there when you're there.
Close
That's
the
what you're
door.
saying.
Yeah, you close the door in the basement, and guests are typically given privacy. But if the guest didn't have his own room, and Shulchan Aruch says a caveat, they're not lighting for him in his house, Tzarich l'shtatet b'pruta. He needs to give a little bit of money to chip in for the Shabbos candles. We'll
So,
see it.
the base, so meaning his house where he originally lives.
Correct. We're gonna have
So
to
how far
dissect
is the
it.
distance? Yeah.
We're gonna have to figure this out.
And secondly,
Yeah.
when the Rebbe was in Eretz Yisrael, right, in the yeshiva, did they say they were doing anything?
We're gonna be discussing
I
yeshivas.
don't think my
We're gonna be
yeshiva told them.
discussing seminaries. We're gonna be discussing all these ideas. It all comes from these two sifrim. What do you do in a yeshiva when it's all boys? Shulchan Aruch, the Oz V'Hadar Mishnah Berurah says, Bachurim, you said people who are unmarried that are going to learn outside of the house. V'hu hadin nisuim. The same halach applies if you're married but you're out of your house. Then that's why they add in their commentary, even though that their wives are lighting for them in their house, they need to light a candle on Shabbos. See? So if you're in a different location, you need to light. Why? Because of the choivas habayis. You're in a different house. In the house where you are without your wife, you got to make sure that you don't trip in the dark. That's why you need to light. And you even need to recite your own bracha. The obvious question on the Shulchan Aruch is, why did he say specifically bachurim, a bachur? Guy who isn't married. If this applies to anyone who leaves their location, even if they're married, they need to light. It's an obvious question on the sif. You know what the answer is? Go
He's
put,
holding.
what?
Sorry.
No, why not?
I say unless he's holding there, if your wife is lighting for you, no matter where you are, you're covered.
They're saying the same applies if you're
I know
married.
that's what they're saying, but
Okay. How could you be covered if you're in a different place? You don't have chavas abayis. You don't have your house that you're in. It's lit. You might trip.
so maybe he does. Maybe the mechaber doesn't hold the
No,
chavas.
no, that's shalom bayis. Everyone holds of that. Everyone holds of shalom bayis. So you don't trip. The Ber Halacha quotes this. Most poskim say that Derech HaChaim holds that if you're married, you're exempt from your wife. We don't really go that way. We're gonna have to see exactly why he goes that route. That's why he didn't say it. Question is, what's he gonna do? Obviously, with the chovas. Take a look at. I don't want to see the Bear Lach inside yet because we're still just on the commentary of the Shulchan Aruch. But that is this is certainly a legitimate question over here about what's going on. Shulchan Aruch continues and said, "But if you're by your wife in that location where she is in that apartment, in that house, you don't need to light because the husband is exempt from lighting because his wife lights." Mishnah Berurah comments, what does this mean? The Shulchan Aruch said specifically unmarried males. How you know that means? Sheish lem nashim. When the Shulchan Aruch said that we're talking about people who aren't married and they're going to yeshiva, they need to lie. Guess what? It really means that they are married. April Fools, we tricked you. It's really referring to you are married. They're just leaving their house. It's a very funny explanation because the Shulchan Aruch specifically said people who aren't married. Sheish lam nashim, they have wives. El shayichem chutz lebeis, they're just leaving their house. V'av she'ishto madlekes bebeiso eina nifta bebirchas ishto. Even though your wife's lighting for you in your house, you're not exempt from the bracha of your wife. Kiven sheyesh lo cheder miyucha b'makom she'esareach sham. Since you have a designated room in the place where you are a guest. This certainly applies if you are not married, that you're obligated to light. So, what this is saying is that this applies if you're married also. And if your wife is lighting for you, you're not covered because you're in a different location. You have your own specific room. And this certainly applies if you weren't married. Because if you're not going to light, it could very well be that now you're going to trip on something because you're not going to see it because it's dark. Therefore, you're obligated to light. And this certainly applies if you're not married and no one is lighting for you the Shabbos candles that you'll be obligated to light. It's interesting that it says certainly if you're not married, the Mishnah Berurah said. Those Vahadar Mishnah Berurah says, Ve'in misha madlik avudo neiru Shabbos b'beis. So no one's lighting for you in your house. Seems like the same would apply if you weren't married. Meaning, halachically, it would be the same. If you're married and you're without your wife, who's lighting for you, but it doesn't count. Versus if you're not married and your mother's lighting for you. It's the same idea. It would be all the more so if you're not married and no one else is lighting for you. Person doesn't have parents, whatever it is. That's actually what they say over here. And you're not getting covered by your parents. You're not getting supported by your parents. They wouldn't cover you in lighting. Shulchan Aruch over here says you need to light Shabbos candle in your room and make a bracha on it. It's talking about when you left to learn. So now you need to light Shabbos candles in your room and make a bracha. Afilu hacheder miyuchod rak lalun sham va'oichlem abayis acher. Even if that room that you have is only to sleep and you're eating in another house, you still need to light there.
Hmm. So this gets into the whole
Yeah.
thing of, like when you're invited to people's houses,
We're gonna get to that.
You're there for a long time. By the time your shop dinners go out,
We're going to discuss that. That's going to be a major issue. And they point out over here, commenting on this Mishnah Berurah, lighting the candle with the bracha needs to preferably be done where you're going to be eating.
oh wow! So he brings that up right away. Okay.
Nevertheless, you are obligated to light over there, aka where you're sleeping, and even make a bracha. So what we see from over here is the first time that we're addressing in all of the halachas of lighting Shabbos candles is the concept of where is the main spot that your Shabbos candle should be lit? And where would the bracha be said? Is the main spot in the location where you're going to eat or where you're going to sleep? Now, let's just specify what we're dealing with over here. Nowadays, people have larger places of residences than there used to be in the past. What that means is, it used to be, there's no such thing, there's no such concept of a kitchen, living room, dining room, bedroom. It was all in one room. It was all, that's what it was. Right? Uh, so now, very easy. It's all in one room. You light there, period. You light where you're gonna eat, and you don't light right next to where you're gonna sleep. By the time the candle goes out, you're gonna sleep anyway, so it's not a big deal. It won't bother you. Nowadays, no one has that type of setup. Everyone's got different rooms. No one lights in their bedroom because why would you want light in your bedroom? You're gonna go to sleep there if you want to go to sleep early or whatever it is, right? Now, if you need access to your bedroom, bathroom, you're gonna light additional candles. But the question is, back then, before electricity, don't think nowadays with electricity. Put yourself back in time and think about practically what would they do when it got dark at night? The answer is they had multiple rooms. They would light multiple candles. The question is, where would you say the bracha on which type of lighting? So the lighting by the meal, that's the main aspect of the lighting. It's the main component. The question becomes though, if you're not eating at home Shabbos night, where do you light? And where do you say the bracha? Where you're eating or where you're sleeping? Let's just point something out. A lot of times where you're eating, they already have candles lit there anyways, right? But what do we say? Chovas habayis. It's an obligation on the actual house where you are, so that you won't trip, right? So nowadays we have electricity to get out of that, but this is where it comes from now. If we look closer at what he says over here, even though preferably you should light where you're eating, that's great. That's only if you're eating at home. Now you can light where you're eating. But in this case, when you have these guys who they're sleeping in one place, they're eating in another place, which is very common occurrence, we call makom chayav l'hadlik sham ba'afal. You're obligated to light over there where you're sleeping. See, we see from over here something very crucial and relevant, which is you have to light in the location where you're sleeping.
Where did he?
We're going to learn about this more in the upcoming Sif. Sif Yud. What?
I'm saying Reish Mem over there. Where's he bringing down the first time something about Achila?
That's gonna be actually in Sif Yud. And we're gonna come back to it more. You haven't seen the end of this question. But what we see from this halacha
And how?
is that they need to light in their room, and then the Mishnah Brew over here is saying a caveat, even if they're only sleeping there, you see where you're gonna sleep is the most important to light.
I guess how long did their candles last? In
Well, we're going to be learning about that right now, exactly how long it needs to last. It's going to segue into this next Mishnah Brura right over here.
okay.
Mishnah Brew over here in Lamed. And it's good. All these questions are unanswered. We didn't cover it yet. We might have spent a lot of hours on these halachas, but that doesn't mean that we covered this topic.
Is there anything we did tour on this? You're supposed to go to the tour.
The Torah, there is no Torah.
There's no tour on
There
this?
is no Torah. Yeah, no Torah. I'll show you just
No, I believe it
I,
just stops at a certain
yeah,
point.
I just wanna share it. This is Reish Shammai Gimel. This is Sifim Gimel Dalet Hey, which is what we saw. And then it goes straight to Yud.
Hmm.
This is all out of here. Straight to Yud.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting, right? And there's very little in the Shulchan Aruch. That's why we skipped that. Very little. So you need to make a bracha on that, the Shulchan Aruch said. In which case, in the case of when you have the guy who's married but he's without his wife, staying in a different location where he's sleeping, he needs to say a bracha. The havakas ner choiva mishum shalom bayis lekasha beitzvevin. Lighting Shabbos candles is obligatory. It's an obligation because of peace in the house, so that you won't trip on wood or on a stone, on rocks. V'sarech liyos hanerus aruchim. It needs to be that your candles, that your oil, there's enough oil in there that it should be long and it should last enough. Shiadliku. Many people don't know this halacha. Very important halacha. How long do your candles need to last? Ad sheyavou lebeisem b'layla. Make sure that your candles are still aflame, that your oil is still lit, the wick is still lit, till when you return to your house at night. Ubelav hachi havi bracha levatala. And if they don't last until when you come home, it's a bracha that's in vain. It doesn't even count that you said a bracha. And you mentioned Hashem's name for nothing. It's a sin. What this means practically is that anyone who's going out to eat on Shabbos night needs to be very careful that they put enough oil in their candles, in their receptacle, whatever's holding the oil, that it will last until they come home. You got to put extra oil. So if you know you're going to be out 4 or 5 hours, you got to load it up with oil. Load it up. This is the Derech Chaim. The lighting so that you won't trip. The relevance of this halacha is glaringly obvious. And unfortunately, many people don't even know that this halacha exists. The ignorance of this halacha is also glaringly obvious, I think. How many people know how long the candle needs to be lit for? They never know. This is another problem why, if you're only putting a little oil in, things extinguishing before you even come home from shul, you can't do that.
I guess what we learned about when they talk in the hotels, because you're not allowed to light in the room, they light in a common place. They tell the women to sit to get enough for Hana,
Come back.
Yotze Zayin.
Hotels, we're gonna come back to that. It's gonna be brought down, and if it's not, then we'll talk about it when we finish Siman Reish Shammai Gimel. But it will probably get brought down. If I'm not mistaken, it gets brought down. The problem is what they specify over here is that if you're coming home and your candles aren't lit, you're not getting pleasure from the candles. If you're not getting pleasure from the candles, it defeats the whole purpose while you're lighting them. Uh, recently, I spoke. I asked him, why do you need to cover your eyes when you light? Like, oh, you're not supposed to get pleasure from the candles, and you're not supposed to get pleasure from the candles. Why not? Like, what is this, Hanukkah? People, they
No,
go
like
through the
that.
They go through the motions and everything, They're taught whatever level of these halachas that they're taught, but they don't really understand what's going on. Don't get confused, fellas. On Hanukkah, you're not allowed to get pleasure from the candles. On Shabbos, you must get pleasure from the candles. Don't confuse them. I just wanted to just pause, take 40 seconds out of our life just to specify that. Just stop. Everything stops. Everything moves fast paced in our society. Just stop, think about that point. You have to get pleasure. The reason for covering up the eyes is so that you don't get pleasure, so that it's considered that the bracha is before the mitzvah, but then after you have to get pleasure. That being so, if you're coming home and nothing's lit, you're not getting pleasure. Nimsa shaloy nehenu mehanedos. And if you're not getting pleasure, then it defeats the whole purpose. And comes the Mishnah Berurah, according to Derech Chaim, Vavi bracha levatala. It's a bracha in vain. It's considered as if you never performed the mitzvah of lighting Shabbos candles. Furthermore, the bracha is in vain, it's for nothing. This also applies, we're going to be learning more about this. Let's say it's a nice fall night, nice spring night, nice summer night. You say, you know what? I want to eat outside. But you're lighting Shabbos candles inside. Are you allowed to eat outside? So that we're going to see the answer is going to be yes. However, you have to make sure that there's going to be enough oil to last when you come back inside after your meal, same halacha, so that you could get pleasure from it. It's amazing how many shilas and cases and scenarios which are incredibly relevant we could cover in one session that no one even learns about. And you know why I think no one learns these halachas? They are lighting the candles, that's a woman's thing. But are the women learning with all the depths that we're learning right now? You know? What are the women learning about? Let's be honest. You have a rabbi, he's preparing, and he's going to teach them. How much of a deep dive is that rabbi doing? How much depth is he going to present? You got to learn it all the way through to understand it. Mishnah Berurah continues and says, Valha, you read them. You read them as a type of fair. They have a lot of times they call it like a workshop where they try to network and they get people together for job hunting. I don't know anything about this because that's not my area of expertise. But in the parentheses of it, it's a place where people gather for business from different places and they're involved with business. I don't know, they have names for these things.
Conferences.
Yeah, conferences. Shemis achsenim harbe bali batim b'cheder echad. A lot of times you have a lot of house owners, they're all in one room. Bein balabayim on b'chedron. You have no one that's hosting the event that's there with them in their room. This is what we would call a hotel. It falls upon them an obligation to light the Shabbos candles, even if their wives are lighting for them in their house. Doesn't work. Al kain, therefore, yishtatefu kulam v'yadlichu echad v'yavarchu chafim l'hoitzi kulam b'brachasa v'gam him yechavnu latzitz b'brachasa. Therefore, what should be applied is that they should all combine together, and they could just light one candle, two candles. Recite the bracha, someone does it on behalf of everyone else and has in mind to fulfill the obligation of everyone else with his bracha. And they should have in mind to fulfill their obligation with his bracha. What we see from over here is fascinating. Usually we say your wife lights, you don't need to listen. Over here, what we're saying is that they should be listening to the bracha and have in mind to fulfill their obligation.
Everyone should come down, yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting. If you have someone who's hosting it in his house and he's lighting on behalf of them or his wife is lighting, then you don't need to chip in and give a little bit of money to combine into the lighting since their wives are lighting for them already at their house, and therefore you're going to be good.
They're not in the same tent, no?
Right. We're gonna have to see more about this in the next sif, he says. Let's see the Oz v'Hadar. I mean, keep in mind they're fulfilling an obligation with the host. Right?
But we didn't learn about it, but
The insight is that they don't need to chip in.
right. So why don't they need to chip in this case?
So they're saying because your wife's still lighting for you does something. Probably what it would do is that chovas haguf, the body's covered. The house where you are isn't covered, but it was done with the body. Wife isha gufa. See what he says over here. Let's talk about these fairs over here. Oh, we skipped this footnote. We're gonna have to come back to that one. Affairs. Since they have their own space, their own room, they need to light. So therefore, they could all be partners. Everyone gives a little bit of money, and then they light. If the host is with them, because then the obligation of lighting would be on the host. They don't need to, because they're really fulfilling their
Yeah,
obligation.
out of curiosity, why do they gotta give this money? Why can't they just say, "Can I just be a partner for free?"
We're going to see more about this also in the next sif. The symbolic act of giving something shows that it's a legitimate partnership, even though it's a small amount in nature. We're not talking about you giving $20.
Give them like a quarter or something. It seems
Exactly.
silly.
Exactly. It seems silly, but it's a symbolic act. You know, it seems silly also that we do a kinyan sudar at weddings, chasanas, use a little handkerchief or a pen to make an acquisition. Talking about a full marriage
Hmm.
or a halachic will. There could be of $1 million on the line. Use a handkerchief. Retail value, 8 cents.
Huh.
Right? So it signifies something when there's a physical item involved. If the host is with them, then the obligation of lighting would fall on the host. They don't need to chip in anything. They're going to fulfill their obligation because their wives are lighting at their house. And just because of the reason of the chovas habayis that they don't trip on anything, that would not be an obligation to light since there's already light in the room from the host. We're going to learn in the next sif that if your wife is lighting for you at home, you would not need to chip in to the costs, like that quarter that we were saying of the Shabbos candles. Because your wife's already lighting for you. So therefore, that would be the difference over here. Same with this idea. The Sefer Chovas Hadar says that if all of them are eating, you know what? I don't want to rush this. Let's do this tomorrow. Let's do this tomorrow. This is going to be a relevant point. I remember. I don't need to put that. Okay, so Mirza Hashem will tomorrow we will continue with these incredibly relevant halachas. Yeah.
The story about the conference. I had a friend of mine.